Then Long Island was good. The kids were brought up there. And then Patty went to the Levittown school because when we bought our house, we lived in Wantagh, but they didn't have any schools close by, so she had to go to the Levittown High School. And then by the time Elliot had to go to high school was built, MacArthur High School was finished, so he went to that high school, which was like 2 streets away from where we lived. And there was a fire station on the corner.
Right. Even I remember that.
Yeah.
Good. So, when Bonnie got older, what kind of things did they do in the neighborhood, or what was daily life in Wantagh?
Well, Elliot used to play on the street that we lived on. Every household had children, and there were children the same ages. And Elliot had enough friends to play with on the street. They used to play stickball. They used to do a lot of things together because the boys were the same age. But Patty, unfortunately, there were no girls her age that she befriended. She befriended someone that lived further in our development. And that's who she palled out with. And then when Bonnie was growing up, there were children on the street. She had 2 little girlfriends that she played with. She either played in their house, and then she also had a little boy that used to come over to play with her all the time. And she used to dress him up in girls' clothing, and they used to play in the backyard together. And the neighbors had children, and they kept busy with the children. And then when she was old enough, she started Hebrew school. And Daddy would come home early enough. We had one of her friends from Hebrew. Her mother used to take the girls to Hebrew school, and Daddy would come home early enough at night to pick up the girls and bring them home. And that's how we worked out the schedule, because I never drove. But she was busy with her friends. They had a lot of school activity that they were involved with after school. Then she took ballet lessons, and she took violin lessons, and they had concerts. And, then we go to the theater, we go to the museums, and kept them busy also on weekends. And then we'd travel in to visit my parents. They moved from Brooklyn, they moved out to, I'm trying to remember the area, but it was also a beach area. And they lived in a senior citizens complex. And we would visit them. But the holidays were always celebrated in my house. Came for the Passover. All my children, no matter where they lived, came for the Passover Seders. I guess you remember those things.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, except Patty, of course, at that time was, when we first moved there, she moved out to Hicksville because Howard was released from the service, and they rented an apartment, and they lived close by. And she had the 2 boys. She had another little boy after she moved to Long Island from Massachusetts area. But then Howard Grumman started to lay off all their engineers, and Boeing came and hired all the men that were fired and paid all their expenses to move out to Seattle. And that was a very sorry day for us because my daughter was moving away. But we used to visit quite often. In fact, we used to drive cross country to visit them, and then after a while we took the plane. But at first we went by car, and we would spend time with them. I got to know the children. And then she had a little girl, Steffi. And it was hard because you don't get to know the children that well. They're so far away.
So what were your favorite things around that time in Wantagh to do, or?
Well, when I lived in Brooklyn, I became involved with the school parents association. And we had a problem. There were a lot of children that were brought from different areas to our school where the parents both worked. And there was no one to pick up the children when school was over at 3 o'clock. So I was active in the Parents Association, and I volunteered to go to Albany to try to have something worked out where we'd have our school open after school hours, where the children would be occupied and safe.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got to Albany, I think 2 or 3 women, we went by train, and we got to Albany, and we went to visit the governor. We had an appointment, and we told him our problem, and he promised he would try to do something to keep the school opened. And about a week or 2 later, we got mail saying that the school has the authority to stay open, but we have to get volunteers to stay with the children. So we had a parents meeting and a teachers meeting combined, where several of the teachers volunteered to stay. We had a gym teacher, an arts and craft teacher, and a music teacher that volunteered to stay after school. But as parents, we had a problem. We had to have security in the building. We didn't want strangers coming in that weren't part of the schools, we didn't want outside students coming in. So I was in charge of getting 2 mothers to volunteer every day to be in the school by the doorway and make sure that whoever came in was either a student or a parent. So every night I would call up, I had volunteer names of mothers, I would call up mothers to find which 2 would come. And it came eventually that a lot of them didn't show up. So I was stuck there every day with my 2 kids to stay in after school. But it was, for me, it was a good experience because I learned how to knit while I was sitting there, because I couldn't become involved with the teachers. I had to sit in the doorway. So I learned how to knit, and I made some beautiful things for my grandchildren. In fact, today, my youngest...
a hat that you knit me.
I made your mother a poncho. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, we went to visit my daughter-in-law, and she still had the poncho I had made, and she gave it to my youngest granddaughter to wear while we were there because it was very cold. And Haley inherited the poncho, and she couldn't believe that and I can't believe that I had made that because it was so many years ago. I had forgotten about it. So now my little granddaughter wants me to teach her how to knit, which I am doing. And I looked up all my information of my knitting directions, and I found the recipe for ponchos, and I'm going to teach her how to make one.
Great.
Yeah. And living in, oh God, like a dream, this whole thing. And bringing back memories I have forgotten about.